Hello, this is Mark from the Eric and Mark Show. Welcome to our program. And today we have a very special guest. In addition to our main man, as we call him, Eric, he is the founder of our playground phenomenon concept, which he's introduced so many of us to. And Suzie, again, is our special guest in the program today. She's a good friend of mine for a number of years now. And this podcast, I decided to call it the Playground Pandemic. How has the playground changed, manifested itself both before, during, and after the pandemic? Now, we know that COVID is still around, but not to the same extent it was maybe a few years ago. It's really had a huge number of, or a huge amount of impact, I should say, on society. And I think that Suzie has had some really strong insight into what she's seen in society, maybe some personal experience, both business, career, personal, that type of thing. So we'll get more into that in a moment. Suzie, welcome to our program. You've been a great friend of mine for a long time. We're delighted to have you. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, well, guys, thank you for having me. Not doing too bad. Appreciate it. How are you doing?
Not bad tonight. I'm just fighting the flu. I got
hmm
sick from a very beloved family member who always seems to get me sick. But yes, other than that, I'm doing all right tonight. Eric, how about yourself?
Doing awesome. Looking forward to this amazing conversation.
Good deal. Good deal. So I'll start out with a question or two here. So Suzie, we've been talking about this a little bit as we mentioned earlier. Now the
hmm
pandemic, and we talk
Yeah.
about the playground phenomenon. And again, for our new listeners, introducing concepts like nepotism, bullying, somebody getting picked last for a sports team, like what's
hmm
happened in my case, maybe or in Eric's case, even though knew we were some of the best players on the field to choose from. What specifically before, or let's start with this. What do you feel has been the most prominent aspect of the playground for you that you could think of, maybe in recent days, weeks, months, or even years that comes to mind before we get into the part of the pandemic? What's been the highest on your radar as to where you felt there were social injustices or somebody taking advantage of a situation or gaining an unfair advantage over you? Whether again it was work, personal, or otherwise.
Yeah, Mark, that's a good question. You know, it's a very multifaceted it's a very multifaceted type of response. I feel like I am someone who has always tried to be a good person, and we all have our vices, but I try to put my best foot forward, and I try to, because I never give up. And, I've been trying to, I've had kind of like a change of heart about what I've been wanting to do with my life. And in recent years, I've, you know, encountered a lot of struggle, financial hardships, health hardships, and struggles. And um, I feel like there have been a lot of, there's been some kind of negative energy kind of being a blockage in my life. And no matter what I tried to do, I could have gotten in the right mindset. Um, I was watching, self-help videos. I was talking to therapists and talking to friends, yourself included. But I feel like there have been a lot of blockages that have been, kind of roadblocks in my life, that have prevented me from, getting a job. And I've lost friends over the course of a couple of years, who I thought were close with me otherwise. They were more conditional friends. But I've come to the realization about those things. Is that I've also come to the realization that I've encountered a lot of shitty people over the years. Whether it was someone I was dating in a relationship with, who I really loved, who you obviously know about, or friends that I've met in the Chicago area, in the city, people I've met outside of Chicago, but mostly in Chicago. And I feel like people were taking advantage of my kindness because they saw that I was someone who, I was very kind of unique and quirky, but they saw that I was a really nice person. And I was always like that, person that was going to give people the benefit of the doubt. Like they could always come to me for anything. I was that empathetic person. And I was that person that they could vent to, that they could talk to, including someone you know very well, who was a friend of mine for a long time, who I did cut off. No reluctance. I just cut her off. But there was a reason that I did it, and that there was at least an explanation. But I've noticed something. That when you assert your needs, that when you assert, the way you feel, and you stand up for yourself and your beliefs, and you tell people that I'm not okay with the way that you're treating me, or I'm not okay with, what transpired or what happened. And they act very and react very defensively to that, then that A, you are not respected, and B, you are always a conditional friend to those people. So they were never your genuine friends at the end of the day. And I've kind of noticed that, people want to put a lot of blame, and instead of taking accountability, people want to put a lot of blame on other people. But I am someone who's okay with taking criticism and changing and being better and not being a negative person. And a lot of people have struggled. I'm not just, um, I'm not trying to devalue other people. I'm not going to not give credit to other people, for struggling a lot and, bouncing back, because a lot of people have struggled during the pandemic, and a lot of people took a lot of hits during the pandemic. They've lost their businesses, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their houses, apartment. I mean, whatever the case may have been. And recently, LA, people have lost their homes. But it's more about the fact of people just don't understand how to treat one another. I understand that people can take criticism. I'll take it. But there are people who will always point fingers at other people, but never take accountability or change themselves. And those people are hypocrites. And those people are narcissists. And I feel like narcissism is a term that's been used very loosely, but it's something that has been brought up in recent years, and it is very much a common theme for a lot of people who want to gaslight you and question your sanity and your logic. So I've lost friends because of that. And I've realized that they were not my friends. So I feel like that's one of the greatest kind of like dilemmas that I've encountered was dealing with those types of people. Passive aggressiveness, people have become very entitled in recent years, rude, inconsiderate. They would get defensive when you would, tell them the truth, or you would state reality or facts. And, they would just get very defensive because, if you tell them something, you are confronting them and you're exposing them, and they're not okay with that. I moved to a different city where I can tell you that there are a lot of issues in this city, like many other cities. I know drinking is a very big part of the culture here, but, it's a smaller city, and a lot of people they know each other, but a lot of people here seem to, they're very much narrow-minded, and they're set in their ways because they are used to a certain culture and a certain way of living, and they really are not as open-minded as people in New York City, for instance, or the Chicagoland area, and I feel like there are a myriad of issues, segregation, inequality with rent and housing, a lot of businesses struggling to stay open, the infrastructure. And so it's just understanding my surroundings now. They're not much better than they were back in Chicago, So I've really tried to fight off, and just kind of stay in my own lane. But I tried to fight off just the negativity and the rudeness that I've encountered for no reason, because people want to do that. They feel the need to, like be inconsiderate or be entitled or rude for no reason.
Absolutely.
whether whether they're biking on the sidewalk when it's unsafe, or they're screaming and shouting on the top of their lungs late at night, and they don't care if they're waking you up, whether you are at a grocery store and they just reach over your head, when you're picking out something in the aisles, they just reach above your head and don't even say excuse me. So it's just that kind of crap, excuse my language, that really starts to wear me out, and you can't, you know, you can't try to talk sense into everyone. But I feel like people have lost their sense of, just compassion and understanding, just basic kindness and common sense, and just understanding how to treat other people. You know what I mean? Opening the door for people, saying thank you, saying excuse me. And it just goes back to, my life. And also just looking in the grand scheme of things at my surroundings, it's exhausting. And it goes back to the struggle to find a job, it goes back to losing friendships. It goes back to just certain things, just the things that people do and the way they behave, it's always going to be either a popularity contest or who could be the bigger asshole. You know what I mean? And so it's draining. It's just nobody's authentic anymore. And there's very few people a few of us who are, people just need to understand that, just at least have some common decency, tell people the truth, and, just give them constructive feedback, and at least tell them, hey, I don't want to talk anymore, and I need space, or you're not going to get this job, and we selected another candidate because of X, Y, and Z. Or excuse me, I'm sorry, I need to reach over you. That kind of stuff. What happened to that? It's very scary to see any of those things. It's like, okay, I'm going to ghost this person, whether it's a friend or a candidate. Oh, I'm going to block this person, whether it's a friend or a candidate or an ex-partner. And it's terrible, and even the dating pool is just a meat market out there. It's like they'll have a couple conversations with you, and then they'll disappear, or they'll ghost you, or they'll block your number. So it's just, what happened to the society, I mean, it's
Absolutely.
just, I feel like a lot of it has to do with the shift in the paradigm of things, and social media, and I mean, yeah, there's just a whole big thing here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go ahead and comment with a few things here, and then Eric, I'd like to hear what you have to say on this. So, what you're talking about to a great degree is what I've felt, even though I've had, for example, including this show, some good things that have happened in my life in recent years, and then becoming a father was one of them as well, and having a better job right now and that kind of thing. I would say I'm fortunate in some ways. But what ends up happening is when somebody's victimized by the playground, when they've been victimized in professional relationships, or as a child in the schoolyard, or in a personal relationship, their self-esteem goes down, and what ends up happening is that they start to feel like the playground is that looming black cloud that hovers over them, right? It infiltrates everything that they do. And I felt that way for a long time. Like I said, recent years have been a little bit better to me. But the thing is, yeah, if you've been going back, 6 or 7 years here, I was in a bad place in my life, kind of like, okay, well, what's happening? What do I do next, and that kind of thing. And it just kept on going back to the playground. Kept on thinking to myself, well, I was unfairly overlooked for certain positions. I was unfairly, not promoted in other positions I'd been in, or mistreated
Mm-hmm.
in relationships. I remembered vivid memories of being bullied as a kid, and how that affected it. And the thing is that one of the things, one of the most important things that Eric and I talk about, I think, and we've mentioned it in several podcasts even recently, is society's emphasis of personality versus character. Character is being, of course, hey, who are you? What are you? Who are you? Or who are you? What are you really about? Your work ethic, that kind of thing. Whereas personality, all you really have to do is be funny, or kind of be the cool kid or the popular kid in the class, and that's going to go ahead and get you the promotion. That's going to get you the more advantageous relationship. it's not merit-based society. It's like we talk about. It's not a lot of cases anymore. Meritocracy anymore. It's really a very, very much driven by the cool kid in class.
Mhm.
Both in and out of the classroom. Eric, I want to hear your perspective on this, based on what I'm saying and what Suzie is saying. Maybe something that you've experienced personally as well, where you can relate.
Yeah, so first of all, Susie, Mark and I greatly sympathize and empathize with what you're going through, and we're sorry you've been mistreated.
Thank you.
Everyone at this table has been mistreated. That's not to minimize what you're going through, but that's the main premise of the show, to let people know that they're not by themselves. There's so many different spectra that we're fighting against. There's a spiritual realm. There's a book that talks about a battle of principalities and powers, and it's hard to fight an enemy. You mentioned feeling like you're being blocked, or there's dark cloud energy over you.
Yeah,
And it's very consuming and very almost impossible to fight that because it's not something tangible. And
it's
that's
not.
where I and that's where I think the playground comes in. Hopefully, it's a helpful notion, because that begins to help us understand that yeah, sometimes maybe we are the problem, but sometimes we're not the problem. There are people, they're not courteous because the playground doesn't reward courtesy. The playground rewards people that take it upon themselves to take what they want without asking permission. Again, as Mark said, as we've covered in other episodes, it's personality over character for some reason. And so it's up
Hmm.
to pioneers like yourself and Mark and I to try and invite more people to this table that is a very important conversation. Since you have been introduced to the playground rules phenomenon, has that at all helped with a mind shift or mental shift or perspective, which may make what you're fighting against more tangible and maybe, make it a little easier to figure out a game plan of sorts?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little hard to say, but it's something a lot bigger than what I can tackle right now. It's just that there's a lot of blockages, and there are, I feel like it's just people who always want to project and question your rationale or your sanity, and they start to question your logic and gaslight you of any type of feel like you are always trying to play the victim, right? You're not. And there's a lot of things that you can only there are so many things that are in your control, but then there are things that are beyond your control that really start to, of course, it's hard to desensitize yourself from those things because it's just overpowering. Like I got into a car accident last month, and I was driving, and I had at least was making some kind of money, and I've encountered situations where I was on the verge of being evicted. I was homeless twice for a very short period of time. So, I mean, it's just about really digging inside and deep down inside yourself and pushing and not giving up, and trying to, just to seek help and seek any type of resources you can, because, it's about like understanding what you have and what you should be grateful for. It might not be a lot. I can only speak for, I don't know, not, I'm speaking in regards to myself, but, you just have to be thankful that you at least have a roof over your head. You have family, you have people that support you, and you can continue pushing and pushing, because it could always be worse, and you just have to believe in a higher power and believe in and have faith. I know society is not going to change. It's going to be shit, but there's only one thing you can control, and it's yourself. So that phenomenon right there, and the playground phenomenon, it's about self-control as well, and it's about how you react. There's a quote that life is 90%. I think it's a certain percentage. I think it's like 90% of what happens to you and 10% of how you react to it. Or I think
Yeah.
it's not, life is 10. I think 90% of 10% of what happens to you, 90% of how you react to it. You know what I mean? It's
Perception,
very
yeah.
little. Yeah. So it's that 10% of what happens to you, but that 90% of how you react to it, because your main problem is your mind, and it's the things around you. It's how well you can block those things out. You know what I mean? And it can get a lot. It's something, there's something called sensory overload, so it can happen. There's just a lot of barriers and a lot of things that are just, they're too much. The car accident and, family issues and financial things in my situation, or Mark, like he mentioned that, he was in a financial rut as well, and he had, his thing with his ex-wife and, parent stuff. And it's just, we all have things that we deal with.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, the thing is that I like how you went ahead and said about the about that earlier in the conversation about cutting people off. That's difficult. I didn't used to have the confidence to do that. Sometimes that's an uncomfortable place to be, but it's a necessary place to be. So what happens is the cool kids in the playground, including one of the people that you're mentioning, who I know who you're talking about, make you feel constantly on an ongoing basis, even though they're so-called friends by name, they make you feel like you're not cool enough, you're not good enough on an ongoing basis. They'll go ahead and hang out with you by convenience, but then after that, because you're not the cool kid in the class or whatever, when it comes time to do something really cool with people who quote unquote really matter, right? They'll probably go ahead and leave you on the sideline. So I was actually very proud of you that you cut that person off because that's the different. That's one of the biggest differences I've seen in you now from maybe about 15 years ago when we first met. Is that before maybe you weren't confident enough and you would have not cut that person off. Whereas recently you said, you know what, this person has not been a good friend. This person has not been consistent. This person hasn't been there for me. And this person is only friends with me by convenience. So you've actually gone ahead and said, you know what, I'd rather not have this person as a friend at all than have them as a friend on their own terms who treats the situation as if they're the cool kid in the class or the won the popularity contest and you're not good enough. So I'm actually proud of you for doing that, for actually having the finding the courage to go ahead and tell that person, hey, you know what? I have nothing against you, but I feel like we don't have anything in common, and I think it's just time for us to go our separate ways. And sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes we have to do that with jobs. Sometimes we have to do that with personal
Hmm.
situations.
Hmm.
And sometimes, we just and sometimes we have to, as they say, take a step back, take two steps forward. Eric, what are your thoughts about that in terms of having to make those tough choices of moving some people out of our lives we see are actually in some ways holding us back? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's very important to cut people out of your lives that are not encouraging you or helping you be the best version of yourself. And then a notion I had as you guys were talking was that, we interviewed a public defender a few months ago, I think it was. And basically, it was the playground of the courtroom. And I think it'd be interesting. I don't know how much time we have left, but I'd like to find you where you are right now. What playground do you think you're battling the most against? Would it be the spiritual playground? Would it be metaphysical playground, psychological playground? Maybe if we could pinpoint the playground that's being the biggest pain to you right now, we can try and identify who the executives are and who the different, playground actors are, and we can figure ways to help cut them out of your life. If that sounds interesting to you, we can proceed down that path, or we can take a different path.
Yeah, I feel like it is spiritual and psychological. I am someone who will give people the benefit of a doubt. I'll give everybody a chance, who I see is someone that I could gel with, that I can vibe with. We have a good connection and we have things in common, and we have common interests and everything. But the thing is that when they're sucking my energy and they're not bringing me anything substantial, they're just stressing me out more. We don't have anything in common anymore. We grow apart and they're just very much they're self-absorbed. They're all about themselves and the world revolves around them. They're the type of people that I just can't seem to get along with, and I there's no reason for me to keep them around in my life, but I'll have the common decency to at least just give them some kind of explanation. I'm not just going to cut them off cold turkey. I'm not going to block them. I'm not going to stop talking to them. I'm going to actually give them some kind of explanation, because there's not a lot of people who are genuine and have that kind of common decency. But it's more, I feel like from a psychological standpoint, I try to be the best person I can be. I try to help animals, and I try to help, and volunteer and do things for my community, which I will be doing. And I try to be an honest, hardworking person. I'm not, I'm not, I'm not a corrupt, evil person. I have a big heart, and I might be rebellious, and I might be very much, I might not, want to, I guess, assimilate with other people, just to fit in. I'm my own self, but it hurts me and pains me that there are people out there who are just, they're shitty people, they do things to hurt other people, but they don't learn their lesson. And they seem to be getting ahead. And I'm kind of in a battle with myself, where I'm like, I want to get somewhere. I'm tired of being in a financial rut. I'm tired of struggling. I'm tired of being late with my rent. I'm tired of like living, barely scraping by, you know what I mean? And I'm doing everything I can, but I'm still not getting anything. And I'm getting sick of it. I feel like I'm not only at a battle with my surroundings, I'm in a battle with myself. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I'm always trying to, oh my God, I have to I have to brush up on my resume. I have to brush up on I have to brush up on my, interview skills. But it's not that. It's just there's always going to be something preventing me. There's always going to be someone else, and I'm tired of it. So it's just I'm yeah.
So it sounds like your biggest frustrations right now in this conversation are in the social professional playgrounds. I heard a very interesting conversation. Denzel Washington has, I guess, a little podcast I listen to sometimes. And he was, something you said brought that to mind when you said that you like to give people the courtesy of an explanation. And he said something pretty wise. He said, that is one of the biggest mistakes people make, because what happens is when you open yourself up to giving explanations, you're opening yourself up for them to negotiate how you feel. And that gives them opportunities to make you be the bad guy or make you seem like you're the person who has the issue. So, developing, because I'm in the same boat. I've been in previous employer, overlooked for promotion 14 times. I'm the first to go to work, last to leave, the most productive. It doesn't seem to matter. People that don't do anything are the ones that, are making the millions. So, but, I think a little bit of it is how we act on the playground. And we want to be nice, so we want to be open. But in being open, we're kind of welcoming their criticism. And something else that he points out is, there's a difference between being nice and being kind. And I think a big mistake is made when we're being nice, because nice does not include having boundaries. And so he suggests, for example, when you say no to something, you just say no. You don't explain why you said no. Because again, explaining why you said no is kind of like you're welcoming their input. So I don't know what you think of that, but
I that's a really good point, Eric. You make a very, very valid point. I just feel like I need to at least say something and not just completely cut someone off without any explanation, because I feel like people will take something out of context and they're gonna get offended and they're going to say something back, and they absolutely will. That's what that other girl did, who I was friends with for a long time,
But the only person fretting about this, maybe I'm wrong, is you. He's probably not concerned about this at all. You're the only one carrying it home with you, if I had to guess. But that's normally how it works out.
If people were to do that to me and ghost me for no reason, and I would say, like, why are they blocking me or like unfriending me on social media? I thought we were friends and I thought we were making plans. I have no idea what I did. At least something, just like, hey, I need some space, or hey, and I feel like it's like, respecting boundaries and just saying okay. But if you get defensive and your response is just like, oh my God, why? That sucks. It's not fair. Then it's kind of like, okay, well, you take a step back and you're just like, okay, now I'm going to block this person. Now, like, their response alone, right? Their response alone is enough, sufficient, and solidifies, oh, okay, I made the right decision. Right.
Yeah, it's hard. The correlation may not make sense, but it's obviously not polite to ghost anybody. But if someone is ghosting you, do you really want to talk to them? So, for example, there's a negotiator that I listen to. His name is Chris Voss. I'm not trying to plug people because they're not plugging me, but they happen to make some very good points. And
Mhm.
he was saying that when you ask someone if they are available to talk and they say no, why would you keep trying to talk to them? Why
Mhm.
would you want to talk to somebody who doesn't want to talk to you?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So, yeah, being ghosted is awful, but I guess it's always good to know where you stand, and it
Yes.
hurts. But it's better to know where you stand than for them to fake it and pretend they're your friends and then stab you in the back later. So it's
Yes.
just a matter of perspective. But what do you think, Mark?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Folks, so we'll do this. Great conversation. And we are actually almost out of time in part one of our segment. We're going to continue part two here in a few moments. Stick around, and I will have my response to what you both just said in regards
Hmm.
to the ghosting. If somebody's
Yes.
ghosting you,
Yeah.
why would you want them in your life? And that's a great point. I didn't used to have the confidence in order to cut somebody off who was ghosting me, but I've learned the hard way through much pain to cut those kinds of people out of my life who insist on ghosting and blocking as soon as they don't get their way because they need to go ahead and gain an artificial advantage over you, which in my opinion, actually ghosting and blocking unnecessarily just to be mean is actually another element of bullying, another element of the playground. But
A
let's
hundred
pause
percent.
here for now, and we
Right there.
will and we will continue here in a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Sounds, yeah, of course. Sounds good.